Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It is, what is tonight? I think tonight is Wednesday. It's Wednesday. And we are reading from The Bird Tribes, Return of the Bird Tribes by Ken Carey. I've been reading a chapter of this every night for the all last week. And this week we're continuing on. I wanted to take a moment to say if you would like to start at the beginning with me. We started last week, and you can find those under searching my videos for story time or going to Healing Pathwalkers, my YouTube channel, where I post other meditations, my former classes, workshops, shows I've done, Morning Oasis, Tales from the Path, things of those nature. Okay, so welcome. I am reading chapter 7 tonight. Last night we read chapter 6, where we learned a lot about what was called the Great Peace Maker, and he was a rebirthing. It was a short chapter, but it was a very intense one to read, actually. So I'm just going to kind of like skim over it and remind us what that one was about. And again, we are reading the bird tribes and how it was that we as humans lost our connection historically to our greater soul consciousness, our star consciousness. That's what's being covered through a series of channels recorded by Ken Carey as he was connecting more and more to his soul star consciousness. And it is fascinating, I have to say, because it confirmed so much of what I was hearing and learning, as well as just brings up and evokes even deeper connections, more awareness, things that I didn't understand the connections of before. Now it's like, oh, right, of course. So it's a powerful work, and I think it's super supportive of all of us. And I think it's through story we learn and grow. So we learned about how the tribes of the Americas lost their connection to the soul spirits. And then we started reading the White Buffalo Woman and the Peacemaker, and these are about how these star consciousnesses continue to birth in when they could, where they could, when the tribes were ready to listen to the gentler messages that ask you to listen to the quiet whispers within and to ignore the loudness of what's happening around you. So now we're going to read chapter 7. Among the Ganienkehaga, I believe. Who is the Huron to come here and preach to us? The old warrior exclaimed. Have these teachings been tried among his own people? Let him go back to his own kind. When his people have practiced these sayings, and when peace has come to the tribes of the north and of the inland sea, let him return to us, and perhaps then we will listen. But now these are empty words. Take them with you back to where you have come from, Huron. You are no longer welcome among us. Your words are not words of peace, but slippery words that cause confusion in the minds of my young men. Without reply, I walked from the council fire. I had been among the Mohawks for some time. I'm going to take out my headphones. Hopefully the sound isn't too distorted or different. Without reply, I walked from the council fire. I had been among the Mohawks now for some weeks. Even at first, they had only reluctantly tolerated my presence, an outspoken stranger from the north. Now, even what reluctant welcome I had was terminated. During the long early spring evenings, I had been speaking to them of the needless tragedy of intertribal warfare. Around the central village fire, I had been presenting my vision of Mohawks, Onondagas, Onondagas, Cayugas, and Senecas all living together with an agreement of peace between them. And forgive me if I butchered those names. I'm only familiar with one. It's shameful. However, in the course of these past weeks, my presence had brought many things to the surface, including a certain growing contention. Opinion regarding the wisdom of what I said was divided. The minority who believed there to be truth in what I was saying came into heated conflict with older warriors who greeted my every word with suspicion. I might have still been granted more time to present my vision had there not been among the Mohawks at the time a bitter young visitor from a neighboring tribe, Ayawentha, an Onondagan, who, for no apparent reason, resented me from the first. Filled with hatred and quick to anger, he violently opposed every argument I ventured in support of a united confederacy. He pointed out to the Mohawks how my presence among them was itself a source of division and conflict, and that while I spoke of peace, I was in fact bringing in disharmony to the tribe, creating disagreements and confusion. Ayawentha, a Hiawatha is like a joker or coyote medicine, sacred clown, as he was more often called, maintained that this was both my purpose and my intention, that my words were of peace were but a blind. I slept alone that evening, away from the main camp. The weather had warmed, the air had hung heavy and expectant. I could smell the gathering rain. Late into the night, I gazed into the cloudy blackness above, pondering my next step. Only once did I get a fleeting glimpse of stars. I awoke late, having reached no conclusion. By the time I had hiked several miles to an area where it was known the deer abounded, the sky had filled with a confusion of the dark clouds. The storm was near. Mid-afternoon found me hunting along the edge of a deep gorge, lying in the branches of a large dying oak that reached out over the edge of a seasonal creek bed some 100 or more feet below. From my position in the overhanging tree, I could see nearly a mile in either direction, and thereby hoped to locate the current position of the white-tail herd, whose trail had led me to this vicinity. This evening's discussion around the fire, I reasoned, would go better if I could supply the venison, for I still intended to pursue my mission. I would not let a few hard words deter the purpose of a lifetime. I was surprised to hear others approaching through the forest behind me. This was a remote spot, yet I could tell by the rustling leaves that it was a large company. Two braves ran forward from the approaching party and gestured at me with quivering arrows to remind where I was. I found afterwards that the Hiawatha had during the morning taken advantage of my absence to so rouse and enrage the principal warriors of the Mohawk nation, including the chief and his closest counselors, that all of them had set out in a body to kill me, planning to thereby rid themselves of this man whom they now perceived as the enemy. No sooner had the party assembled among the trees at the edge of the gorge when they began to berate me, and in the most violent fashion accused me of being a Huron agent sent to split the unity of their tribe. I listened in patience at first, but then my spirit was roused. Ignoring the order of the two young men whose arrows were trained upon me, I stood in the central fork of the twisted and dying tree. I pointed out to them that though they claimed they wanted peace, and they were so defensive and subconscious, and unwilling to give those such as myself from neighboring tribes credit for having guileless motivation, they created enemies through their fear. I used myself as an example of one who had come in peace and friendship, but now who felt himself so mistrusted and falsely accused that were I any other, I would become in fact their enemy. I told them how their own fear and suspicion had turned many of their neighboring tribes into enemies, when in reality these neighbors wanted peace as much as any Mohawk. Look, I said, pointing to the ground at the base of the tree. I can see your hatred and your fear. Can you see it too, cracking through the air? At that very moment, the storm clouds, which for some time had been soberly massing above us, suddenly exploded. As a deafening roar of thunder shook the tree beneath me, a crackling fork of jagged lightning danced ominously upon the ground at which I pointed. Look, I repeated, in the pause that followed. I will show you your hatred. It flows from the group of you standing there up the trunk of this tree, misshapen tree, and fragments like these dying, twisted branches, into 10,000 twigs and brittle forks. The idea that you live with, that warfare among tribes is necessary, is as false and misshapen, as precise, as precariously rooted as this dying tree that hangs suspended over the gorge. Your belief in warfare as a way of life not only divides you from other tribes as the branches of this twisted tree divide from the trunk, but it also divides you from your families and from your own hearth fires, from all the things that you love the most. And every day you go forth to fight. You know this is true. Do you increase your security through your belief of this monstrous life? No. The idea itself divides you from each other, for it encourages values and forms of behavior that do not make for friendship among warriors, peace within villages, or happy songs around your sacred fire. This lie you believe is like a dying tree, a tree that offers no comfort, no fuel, no shade, a tree that saps the strength and twists the values of all those who become entangled in its many devious branches. If you continue to live your lives among the roots of this deceitful tree of war, you, like the Hiawatha there, will find the ravages of war entering into your very heart. Within your very soul will the battles rage as you are separated, as Hiawatha has been from the inner peace that is the birthright of the real peoples. I'm not a Mohawk, this you know, but neither am I the Huron you imagine now stands alone. I come from the tribe of the real people. I am Ungwihonwe. I represent the unseen ones, the winged ones of heaven. They are with me now. The breath of their spirit fills my body, and my voice carries their power. Together, we beseech you for love of all that is sacred and true, for love of your families, your children, and your children's children. Leave the deceitful tree of war and take weapons against your fellow men only in self-defense. Move your village under the great boughs of the living tree of peace. Men of the Mohawk Nation, if you care for honor, if you care for truth, if your children are to grow up healthy and whole, cut this tree of violence from your hearts. We will cut this tree of violence from our hearts, all right. Hiawatha spat in anger. We will cut it here and now with you in it, to fall to the gorge where vultures, wolf and panther will find what little nourishment a carcass like yours has to give. There was a rumble of assent from the gathered warriors. An elder chief raised his hand for silence and said, Dagan Nawaida, you have been using this very tree upon which you stand to tell us, your betters, what we must do with our lives. We do not need you to direct us. We choose what we will keep in our lives. We choose also what we will cut away. I think this time young Hiawatha has spoken wisely. We will indeed cut this tree away, he said, his face darkening. That you and your divisive words might fall with it into the gorge below, where they will trouble our people no more. Sharply he commanded several braves to begin cutting down the tree, but with lightning movement, before they could begin, I drew the tomahawk from my belt. Pointing with it to the darkened clouds above, I screamed a cry so savage and so terrible, it seemed to some of the Mohawks that it was my command that caused the sky in that moment to open, and the rain began to fall in angry torrents. No warriors of the Mohawk nation, I shouted through the fury of the wind-driven rain. It is I who have said the twisted tree of war must be cut from your lives. It is I who will cut away this tree and fall with it into the gorge. My act will not give you a teaching that my words have not. No man should ever be afraid to cut falsehood from his life, even if it is the very thing upon which he is standing. Once he recognizes it, he should not fear to let it fall away, for to remain standing upon a lie, once it is known to be false, is to forswear future peace and joy. And there is no value to living in such as these are your roots. With savage fury, I began to hack away at the trunk of the tree upon which I stood. The Mohawks were amazed. They watched in silence while the rain poured with the passion of battle upon me. I worked my weapons ceaselessly again and again in violent swings, each driving and slashing, cutting deeper and deeper into the murky grain of the trunk. Nearly an hour passed, punctuated only by the falling rain and the sound of my tomahawk against the wood. I spoke no more until only a small section of the trunk remained. I knew that one or two more blows would sever the tree. I stood then, for the first time since my fury was unleashed. This time the faces I saw were more different from expression. This they respected. This they understood. Like all who are attuned to the Great Spirit, my timing was in perfect harmony with the natural world. For at that very moment I stood. The sun broke through the clouds, and a rainbow appeared in an arch of brilliance across the valley behind me. I pointed to the circle of the sun. I pointed to the circle of the horizon. I spoke of the many complete circles of nature. The circle of the skies, of the moon, the circle of the stars in the night sky, the circles of seasons, of fruit ripening on the vine, the circle of the honest and open eye. The truth is beautiful, I said. The truth is like a circle. Yet the rainbow you see behind me is not a full circle, but a half circle. A half circle of 5 colored light tribes shining together in harmony. It appears today to remind the nations and the tribes of the Iroquois that we must complete the rainbow's circle in our lives. through our lives, through living in harmony with the earth, through her creatures, through living in harmony with the laws of nature, and through living in peace with the other nations around us. Each tribe is like one of the colors you see before you that together compose the rainbow. Watch for a moment. Do you see where the colors touch and intermingle? This is the trade between tribes that live in peace, where people honor the ways of the Great Spirit. New and more beautiful colors come into being. Through their exchange, there is plenty for all. The rainbow has been given to us, been given to us as a sign to remind us that we must become tribes living in harmony together on the earth. The rainbow is a half circle that we must complete in our hearts. Except for self-defense, there is no place for violence in a heart that honors the teachings of the Great Spirit. Remove such errors from your lives, as I now remove this tree from its false roots. And with that, I leapt into the air and landed with my full weight upon the overhanging mass. There was a tremendous crack as the twisted oak broke loose from the cliff and tumbled with me, clinging to its branches, end over end, through empty space. The drop was over 100 feet, and the truth is, I had not before considered whether I should live or perish. The opportunity that had been presented to me gave that teaching was sufficient. I felt to justify for the whole of a lifetime. Whether I lived or died in that one body made no difference to me, for I knew that the people of the Mohawk would be more peaceful after what they had seen. I held tightly to the falling branches, that feeling only gratitude for the perfect moment that held me in its heaven. As it happened, the falling tree landed in the upper branches of several closely growing trees in the gorge below. Though I was unable to maintain my hold in the collision, my fall was nevertheless broken by a succession of branches. In reality, it seemed to me these branches were the hands of the Great Spirit catching me in his love. I reached the ground with a few scratches, a bruise or two, and a triumph in my heart. As Providence would have it, as I was making the return journey of about 12 miles, circling back up the canyon to the Mohawk encampment, a large buck crossed my path and ended up arriving with me on my shoulder as I entered the village, just as dusk was falling. The Mohawks were silent as I entered the camp. I threw the buck to the ground at the edge of the fire, making it clear that it was my gift to the people of the camp. I waited, standing in silence only for a moment, when the same elder chief who had just that afternoon approved the method of my death gestured to me to be seated. I knew the worst of the resistance was past. In the feast that followed, my surmise proved correct. The Mohawks were now open to hearing my message. However, not one of the Flint people was touched so deeply as the Onondagan Hiawatha. His transformation was like the transformation of darkness into light. Whew. That was really intense, wasn't it? I think the thing that struck me the most about this is the same message that keeps coming back to me. We've all been sent home. The Great Spirit is telling us to stop. I wonder what's happening in areas where war is still occurring over tribal laws, feuds of religion, feuds of who is God's chosen people over any other of God's people. Feuds over the rules at which we honor each other and show each other those respects. Respect being not only for the name or uh, showing respect to say hello to somebody, but respect of peoples. There's many peoples of the world who are not given their value, their place. They're not respected as human beings. They're not even seen as such. They're seen as assets. Here in our country, every time we fill out a tax return, we sign ourselves away as not a person, but as a corporation. Identity. It's that act of identifying ourselves as separate from our other selves. It's that act that begins to create the hole inside of us that we spend the rest of our lives trying to fill. We try to fill it with food, food, drugs, sex, alcohol, all the things that people use. It's to try to fill that hole inside of us. When the truth is, the hole is our great spirit, not living within us, not breathing it in. As I started reading, it's no surprise, I hear birds often outside my window at different times during the day, but they came on strong when I started reading today. And each night they have been. I also have a very annoying dog that lives just right over there, and it barks all the time, but it never does while we're reading. These messages are important, and they're important for all of us to take in. If we take in that we no longer can separate away and have a form of righteousness that says, in any way, I am, and therefore you aren't, we are part of the problem. In any way, I am a healer, you are not. No, I can heal. You can witness, remember, and heal too. I can be, and you can too. These are so simple, and we teach them to our children in elementary school and then walk away and forget them. Let's stop forgetting these words of separation, words defining us as one people or another, and let's just all be the real people. Let's just all hold the light of our soul in our heart and walk with honor and integrity, witnessing with awe and wonder the others doing the same. Let's not police one another. Let's witness when someone has forgotten who they are. That's when they hurt another. That's when they ask another to do for them more than they can for themselves or anyone else. It's not to punish them. It's to help them remember who they are. There's a tribe in Central Africa, I believe. I forget the name of the tribe. And when someone steals or somebody does something really horrible or hurtful to someone else in the tribe, the whole tribe surrounds them and tells them memories of who they are to them, of things they've done for them, of what they love about them, until the person remembers who they are. Now, this doesn't mean I'm asking you to go and embrace and run up to every lost, angry, violent person, warrior with a swinging knife. No. But I am asking you, instead of saying, I am better than that person, we can witness with awe and wonder the pain and the journey they're on. And that's it. We don't have to define it. We don't have to value it or devalue it or value ourselves based upon it. These acts of separation are what kill our soul. This doesn't mean I'm saying don't leave if you can't survive somewhere, or if being somewhere is only a matter of survival. I'm saying embrace what's true for you, and that will allow you to witness what's true around you. And only in that way can you learn to navigate with your boat amongst the shoals, sandbars, into the mouths of the river to deliver the cargo, to deliver the messages that you came to deliver. No, you don't put a woodpecker on your boat, obviously. But does that mean a woodpecker has no place? Absolutely not. We love woodpeckers. So, it's a big one tonight. I'm really grateful for this quiet time where war just isn't on the plate. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow. And tomorrow evening we'll be reading at 6 because tomorrow is my class day and I have to be ready for my students at 7. Have a good night.